and the American-Mexican Anti-Discrimination Alliance. She's also a recipient of the Mexican government's prestigious Oacute Medal. We also have Angelica Salas. She is director since 1999 of the Coalition for Humane Immigrant Rights of Los Angeles. Among her accomplishments has been helping win in-state tuition for undocumented immigrant students, establishing day labor job centers throughout California, and leading efforts to allow all California drivers to get driver's licenses. We also have Israel Fuentes from Las Vegas. He's the president of El Comité de Unidad Guatemalteco, or the Guatemalan Unity Committee. His committee works with the nearest Guatemalan consulate, which is in Los Angeles, to provide services for the city's Guatemalan community. And he is also host of La Hora Chapina radio show, which educates Latino immigrants on politics, public affairs, and immigration policy. Lastly, Juan Jose Gonzalez. He works with the New Americans Democracy Project and the Illinois Coalition for Immigrant and Refugee Rights in Chicago. The coalition has been successful in generating more than 25,000 voter registrations and 50,000 immigrant voters, and getting 50,000 immigrant voters to the polls in 2008. He's also organized a team of immigrant youth called the Dream Team to advocate for certain policies like the DREAM Act and driver certificates for immigrant drivers. He's a naturalized immigrant from Mexico and grew up in Los Angeles, and a 2006 graduate from Princeton with a degree in politics. One of the lessons that we're trying to draw from this project on immigrant integration in a variety of different regions of the United States is the impact of context, of geographical and historical and political factors, and how they influence particular patterns and practices of immigrant integration. So I'd like to begin by asking the panelists how they see those kind of factors, geographical, historical, and political, particularly influencing patterns and practices of immigrant civic engagement and political participation in their cities.
Again, my name's Angelica Salas. I think I smiled when he said on my bio, that this was I led the efforts around driver's license, or worked on this. And I feel like that for us, at least for our organization and for Chirla and for the people we work with, was a very significant moment for us, because we were an advocacy organization, an organizing organization, an organization that built coalition, but we weren't an organization that actually built power in terms of electoral power. And what we saw is that we actually, in California, the driver's license law passed and was signed by a governor. And because of not having significant political power as immigrant communities, we weren't able to protect it. So we won the driver's license, and literally within a month it was taken away because it was rescinded by the 2/3 vote from elected officials that mostly were Democrats. And so that for us was a moment in time when we said we have to change our practice. And I feel in terms of context, when did it begin? I want to first show you a video, and then I wanted to go through a presentation on...
More than 9 million Latinos expected to vote in this November's election. This group could have a huge role in choosing the next president. And Thelma Gutierrez tells us the task of getting all of those voters registered in some cases has fallen to teenagers barely old enough to vote themselves. Thelma?
We'll just leave it.
That's okay. We could just leave it like that. Yeah.
It's going to take time to buffer.
To be free, come together. More than 9 million Latinos expected to vote in this November's election. This group could have a huge role in choosing the next president. And Thelma Gutierrez tells us the task of getting all of those voters registered in some cases has fallen to teenagers barely old enough to vote themselves. Thelma?
John, Kieran, a new generation of Latinos began to mobilize 2 years ago with the immigration marches. Back then, many were just teenagers who were chanting, "Today we march, tomorrow we vote." For them, that day has come.
Saturday morning, 7 a.m. 18-year-old Sheila Salinas is preparing for a big day to register as many new Latino voters as she can.
My parents are from Mexico. We've been here for like 10 years.
Sheila's father is a day laborer, her mother a babysitter. Her dream is to become a lawyer to help other immigrant families whom she says need a political voice. one they can only get if they register to vote. So she rides the bus for an hour across town.
Hello.
We're going to be canvassing to try to register new voters.
For the next several hours, Sheila and others like her hit the street and knock on doors.
Oh, I just want to see if you already registered to vote. Disculpe, ya se registró para votar. Well, have you registered to vote?
When they're not canvassing,
¿Hay alguien en la casa que le gustaría registrarse para votar?
they cold call potential voters. The goal of this immigrant rights organization is to register 20,000. They're almost there.
So I actually wanted to show this as part of the presentation. I can't show the whole clip, but I thought it was important to actually, we've been talking a lot sort of the macro aspect of civic engagement and Latino civic participation, but I really wanted to talk about the people that were marching and their then progression towards actual participation in civic engagement. From our perspective, each one of those individuals that was actually marching also needs to be able to develop the skill set that is in, part of electoral organizing. And that maybe I want to ask you, how many of you guys have been precinct leaders or have ever gotten out the vote with a raise of hands? Okay. So as you guys know, it's a particular skill set that we discover in our community we don't necessarily have, which is this ability about going, having organization, geographic organization, going out, knocking on doors, engaging people, talking to them on the phone. And we thought it was important that immigrants themselves actually acquired that skill set that was so important. So when we said we believe that the politics of engagement for Latinos is, yes, it continues to be marching, but it also has to include this electoral piece and the building of power through electoral process as well. So I'll just go through here. So for us, we describe our civic engagement model as movement building electoral model, which actually seeks to engage directly immigrants themselves in this whole process. So it's not that we're bringing people from outside, moving forward an agenda that is pro-immigrant, but that doesn't leave a skill set back with our communities. We also felt that it was critical that the individuals that participate were actually our members. So what we had, the people who were actually knocking on doors were day laborers and families. And out of these individuals, we had a committee in the San Fernando Valley where in many instances this is an area that's completely ignored by most political campaigns, electoral campaigns. And we definitely wanted them to participate. We wanted household workers to participate. I went kind of far, but household workers to participate, immigrant college students to participate, immigrant students who are in the different high schools to participate. And we also wanted to be part of a statewide campaign. We call California the ATM of electoral politics. People come in to raise money, but don't necessarily spend money in California in order to move the votes. So we felt it was very important that we create an alliance across the state of California called Mobilize the Immigrant Vote that could actually really create infrastructure and create the ability to actually move forward a pro-immigrant agenda. Chirla focused its work in Los Angeles. We worked in the San Fernando Valley, the San Gabriel Valley, and we also worked in LA County. Most of the work actually around electoral politics also just happens in the urban core. But we felt that it was important was that we recognized that some of the highest increases in the immigrant population were actually in the San Gabriel Valley and the San Fernando Valley, and that we include them as places that we wanted to move forward. But also that in terms of immigration reform, these are critical spaces where we actually have congressional representatives that actually are going to make key decisions. They're decision makers on immigration reform, so that we needed to have a political voice in this area as well. So our goals, as you heard in the clip, was 20,000 new citizens to be registered to vote, that we contact 9,000. This is one of our leaders who is out there in the street. So we had a precinct walking component, and then we also did a phone banking component in Los Angeles County. We went out into the media and and especially the ethnic media, to get people involved and engaged. We had 36 media hits. And now I wanted to this is what I'm the proudest of in terms of demonstrating who actually made up our set of volunteers. So we had over 200 volunteers. And as you see, we actually had 18 household workers that were part of this campaign. We had 36 members of our immigrant college youth. We had 35 members that were actually students in the high schools, 39 Valley community members that included individuals who were actually the victims of raids in the Micro Solutions raid, and 45 new volunteers that actually came through because of the program. Plus, we actually, as a coalition, we work with different organizations. So from our allies, we had 19 volunteers. So what were we able to do? Our numbers are not as high in terms of, when we talk about a statewide, but we're focusing just Los Angeles County. But I think it's very important to show that we ended up with 8,611 contacts. We ID'd 6,500 voters who we were moving on No on Proposition 6, which is both an anti-youth and an anti-immigrant proposition. And we had 6,544 people who actually voted. And as you see, most of them voted against the proposition. Now, I want to go through and in terms of our accomplishments, and then I think I'll leave it at that because we can have certainly more conversation on all the rest of the agenda. So we ended up, we built a real presence in San Fernando Valley where there really in this area, these are places where people don't get mail, they don't get calls, they don't get knocked on doors. People just do not show up at the door. So if we remember Marcelo's earlier presentation that said, well, if you don't get contacted, you're not going to participate. So we really wanted to go out there in this particular area that really matters for our politics because of the representatives that are there. We activated recently registered voters in Los Angeles, and then we also showed that we had a 76.4% voter turnout in these infrequent areas, and there was an increase in precinct turnout of 14% in the precincts where we worked. We contacted nearly the 9,000 voters, 611, but then we also registered, we surpassed our registration goal and registered 34,500 new citizen voters. But see, the people who actually did this were not sort of the typical individuals who actually get this work done, which is who we've learned a lot from, which is a very strong union leadership or a very, I would say the campaign itself, but it was in our community. So after this campaign is over, our members now, they marched, they got the vote out, and then people can say we voted. And I think now the challenge, which I want to engage in as part of the conversation, is there's a second piece, which is participation as a constituent with your elected official, where you call and you email and you make pressure in order for a policy to change. So I say, hoy marchamos, ¿verdad? We said, hoy marchamos, mañana votamos, and now we have to say, y luego llamamos, escribimos, y ganamos.
I like it. I have a PowerPoint as well, very similar to Angelica's. My name is Juan Jose. I'm with the Illinois Coalition for Immigrant and Refugee Rights. I'm going to switch over real quick. As you'll see, Angelica's, Chirla's model and ICR's model consistently learns from each other. We're two organizations. We're always kind of sending each other's people to learn from each other and to think about civic engagement. When we started doing our work, we've been doing this work informally for 6 years and systematically for 4 years at the coalition. Since 2004, we first really ran our first campaign. And when we started to really look at winning on issues in our state, like driver's licenses, driver's certificates, and in-state tuition, we really thought we needed power. And in Illinois, you have old school Chicago style machine politics, whereby only thing that matters is how many votes can you turn out. And what we noticed is that we were losing power by not having legal permanent residents become citizens, right? So we really started to think about how do we target for voting legal permanent residents, those eligible to naturalized adults, but also the children of immigrants and things of that nature, right? As you can see in Illinois, there's not only immigrants in Chicago, what everybody thinks about, but immigrants are starting to scatter to the collar counties, and you see here by density and nation of origin. So we really had a challenge about how do we start to work out there in the boonies with the farmers and the whole nine, and ex-urban communities. This slide, I think, really represents the crux of ICR's thinking about civic engagement. There's about like a third of the immigrant population is about undocumented in Illinois. About a third is, legal residents, legal permanent residents, and about a third are naturalized citizens. And then, about another equal amount is like there's U.S.-born children of immigrants, right? So what we think about is like, how can we get all of these groups, different type of legal statuses involved in the same campaign? And that to us is absolutely important. That's the New Americans Democracy Project, whereby the citizenship component that Luvia mentioned earlier is heavily a part of the campaign. Those who are undocumented that we work with, the community organizing, are also a part of the campaign, and obviously the citizens are a part of the campaign. And the way everybody's a part of the campaign is everything is all about voter turnout and voter contact. Those who are undocumented, if you cannot vote, you can turn out family members, you can make phone calls, you can phone bank and door knock, right? If you're a legal permanent resident, the action you can take is to become a citizen, but also you can phone bank, you can also door knock. And for citizens, they can take the action of voting as well. Everything is all centralized around our candidate, which is immigration reform. We are nonpartisan, so all our material, all our content was exclusively about immigrant reform or immigrant power. Specifically, for the Asian and Arab communities in Illinois, we really used immigrant power. These were our results over the last 4 years. We had over 80,000 voter registrations since 2004. In 2008, we were able to raise over $1 million for C3 and C4 electoral work. So I don't want to. That seems like a lot of money now, but trust me, back when we first started, it was not there. So for us, it's all about long, steady, slow processes. Even our citizenship work, like in talking to Professor Ayon, is all about not immediate impact, but long, steady, slow organization building. In 2008, we were able to contact either through mail, phone, door, canvas, or phone bank about 144,000 voters. And we're still in the process of determining how many of them actually voted as we re-release the voter file in Illinois. And we do a lot of training for our members and for the people who will participate. We had about over 400 leaders trained in that time. This is really another part of how we do our work that's really important to our model and how we think about it is our targeting. We look for obviously dense areas of Latinos, Asians, and immigrants, obviously primarily Mexican. But if we were to just focus on density, we'd only work in Chicago. But that's not part of our goal, right? Our goal is to build immigrant power. So as a result, we're always building capacity in the suburban areas where you see the red areas. And we're all looking to increase voter turnout. And informally, we're targeting based on congressional districts and state representative districts where we could be a swing vote. You shouldn't tell that to funders. This is we're a membership-based coalition, so a big part of it is, I think what Xochitl said in her paper about migrant civic engagement, not only hometown associations, not only nonprofits, but also ethnic associations. We include social service agencies, community-based organizing groups. All of these groups are part of the campaign yearly, and it's very difficult to such different styles to bring them together. But I think it's very, very important to us that, wherever there's a strength and whatever there's a type of capacity to bring them into the campaign. Another big part of our model is the training of immigrant organizers. For us, we believe strongly in hiring young people, 18 to like 30, some of them just out of college, just out of high school, and we train them as full-time organizers. They have to be bilingual. A lot of them are personally affected by the issue of immigration reform. A lot of them come from the community in which we're placed to work. They're local. They're trained by us and by national organizations, and then we work the crap out of them. We work them 6 days a week for about 12 hours a day or more. They must recruit by election day at least 100 volunteers to canvass about 3,000 voters on election day. And that is their goal and that is their duty. And they hated me for that, but that's okay. And, obviously our impact and results, right? We see an increase in immigrant power. We see more access to our legislators, more access to policy brokers, more access to winning on issues. In 2007 was the first time in 13 years that we passed driver certificates out of the State House of Illinois, and we really directly correlate that to our ability to mobilize the immigrant vote in 2006. But then, like Angelica said, maintain a database of those supporters and then contact them in 2007 so that they can contact their legislator. It's an increasing sophistication that over time we're really excited about where it can go. And so that's kind of always the final slide I have. So, it's all about, we are all Americans. This is a central theme. We use a lot of this imagery, always referring back to the marches, to get people motivated out to vote.
I'm really proud to be part of this group, coming from the City of Lights that kept Latino immigrants in the dark for years. I arrived in Las Vegas in the late 70s, and one of the things that I noticed back then was that English was one of the main items as far as finding a job or staying in the city. If you were obligated, to know the English language, otherwise you couldn't find a job at a casino. I don't think that having papers was really that important back then. But another thing was that whenever you were pulled over, or a Latino was pulled over by either the Henderson Police, North Las Vegas Police, or the Metropolitan Police, the only bilingual people were immigration officers. So if they would ask the driver or the people in the vehicle, do you speak English? And no, okay, step out of the car. Immediately they would call immigration. And one of the good things, I guess, back then was that all the Latinos were Mexican. So they would send up 2 or 3 days later, they were sent back to the other side of the border. And, today, you're from Guatemala, so you're going to Guatemala. Back then, it was a lot easier to get back from Tijuana, or Nogales into the United States. So that was a good thing to a certain extent. And also, there was really nobody, they couldn't complain because there was nobody to complain to. There weren't any leaders available, even immigration lawyers. There weren't any because the Spanish media started, I think, in the early 1980s. We didn't have Spanish newspaper, television, or radio stations. So one of the other problems that I would say we noticed, because there were a few of us that were trying to figure out how to go ahead and form a civic group and to see how we could help these people that were being abused and or didn't have really any representation. Whoever was arrested, they didn't have a chance to defend themselves. There were also companies, large companies, employing Latinos, knowing that they were undocumented. And I don't know if it happens all over the U.S., but in Las Vegas, the first 2 weeks of work that money is kept, and your next 2 weeks you get your paycheck. Well, some of these companies would let them work for the month, and then a day before payday they would call immigration. So those people were sent back to Mexico without any money, and again, there was nobody to complain. And I guess the increase of the Latino population, it started in the early 1990s, and it was because of job opportunities. The more Latinos, there's an area in Las Vegas, Eastern and Bonanza, that was the little area where Latinos would come to because one, rent was really cheap, and another is that since Spanish was their only language, that was the only area where they could find Hispanics. Anyways, we by trying to, there were perhaps about 20 of us trying to organize a group, but we were, I guess, unsure of what the situation. Las Vegas is not like Los Angeles or Chicago, a city of immigrants. We the first thing that we started doing was, well, I started a radio program, because going from door to door and tell them, hey, let's do something about it. Let's go ahead and form a group. That would have been difficult. When I saw the picture of the students going from door to door, it reminded me of Las Vegas before the March of 2006, how the students went from door to door telling everybody about what was about to happen. And what was about to happen is that we took the city by surprise. The marchers weren't pre-announced. They weren't. When the marches happened, I was already a member of the Sheriff Committee for Minority Affairs, and the sheriff said that he started getting phone calls and say, you know what, there are thousands of people getting on the streets. What are you going to do? How are you going to stop them? And he said, well, we're not going to stop them. We're going to get 600 more officers out there to make sure that nothing goes wrong. But in the meanwhile, in the 90s, it was at the end of the 1990s, at the beginning of 2000, I think it was 2002, when we first started with a Salvadoran group. Then we went Guatemala, Honduras, Nicaragua, all the way to Panama. And once we had Belize, was included. Once we had those groups, we went ahead and started Central American Coalition. Well, South America wanted to be part of it also, so we started getting South America. Then we decided to get NOLAC, which has nothing to do with NALAC, Nevada Organization of Latin American Countries. It was 23 countries, I think, about 23 countries that we had in that group. I guess the excitement of getting out there and doing something became after we noticed that California had a lot of groups working pro immigrants, Chicago, Miami, New York, and I think that's what motivated the Hispanics in Las Vegas. And by then we had I think we had an increase of about I think it was 400%. From the early 90s to the 2000, there was a lot of construction. There was, there were new jobs, and by then, there were a lot of businesses. The Guatemalan Unity Committee was formed by people that own small businesses, because that forming a group, it takes money, okay, and it takes time. And if you work for someone else, it's difficult to have time for community work. So this is how we started the Guatemalan Unity Committee. But later on, all along we didn't have the blessing that California and other big cities had, that they could come up with money. We had to do it on our own. I believe that when we were all together with NOLAC, we became a magnet for the politicians and even for the Minutemen, because they had been to Las Vegas, in previous years, but when they saw that we were out there forming large groups, the Minutemen decided to start, showing up, and also when the students decided to go ahead and go against their parents and against the school district and go out on the streets and start marching, we decided it's a good idea to, follow them. Let's back them up. One of the problems that I heard of before here with the previous panel, but one of the things was that we wanted to decide. At first, we wanted to march with our own flags, the flag of the country of our origin, right? But then we thought that it would have been offensive, So instead of carrying one flag, we carried two, our own and the American flag. And when I said our own, I mean a lot of us citizens of this country have double citizenship. So that's about what's going on in Las Vegas.
Buenas tardes. I'm Lenny Gonzalez, and I live in Arlington, Virginia. You go straight south in 14th Street. As soon as you cross the bridge, you are in Virginia. You are in Arlington, Virginia. And Israel said something, and I'm going to have to repeat it. Virginia is not Las Vegas. Virginia is not Chicago or California. We are Latinos. We are the new face in Virginia. We're the newcomers in ours is an emerging community. The Latino community is recently new in Virginia, and we are 6% of the population. We are imagining that by the next census, that number probably might be double, and that's already double from the last census. So our story is very different here. You're talking about cities. I cannot talk about a specific city because we have Latinos all over the state of Virginia. Yeah, there is a larger concentration in the northern part of the state, but we're a new community. We're the newcomers in this state, and what has moved us to practice civic engagement and political participation. And the thing that came to me is we have sort of two groups, like probably in every other city. The immigrants who are not a U.S. citizen, that they cannot vote, but and sometimes they have very limited political participation, and then the citizens who can vote and have a bigger participation in the political matters. But I think for all of us together, what really makes us think that, wow, we have to do something, where for the last 3 or 4 years, or maybe more, 5 years, we have to battle, like every other place, we know that, like every other place have to battle many hundreds, sometimes hundreds of anti-immigrant legislation proposals, bills, that they have come and saying, wow, they don't like us in here. They don't want us to be here. We thought that we were welcome in here because Virginians, newcomers in Virginia, Latinos in Virginia participate at all levels of the economy. I mean, we have the chicken and turkey processing plants, large employers. I think at least 80% of the workers in there are Latinos. Many of you who got Christmas trees, there's a Christmas tree farm in the central part of the state that probably by end of November, middle of November, thousands of Mexican workers particularly come to harvest the trees. So if you see your tree from Virginia, that Christmas tree has been harvested by Latino hands, with Latino hands. So it's like they don't like us in here, they don't want us in here. So that sort of help us and push us to mobilize and to become a little bit better organized, particularly here, and probably this is what you have heard most, the ones who are not from this area, are Prince William County and the slew of anti-immigrant proposals at the city level that they had. and then they were passed into state legislation. So that has been, because we're a new community, that has been a challenge, which I can imagine is a challenge when you have newer communities. We have to work harder to organize, and we have been very lucky to have good partners and to probably to examples like Chicago and California, and I'm learning from Las Vegas, to form coalitions, or to try to form coalitions with other groups that can help us to move better and to carry our message. So those that's what has pushed us to, and I think we can see one of the best examples of political participation and civic participation for those ones who couldn't vote at last year's election, but they actively participated and organized. We had some efforts, not as organized. We don't have the organizations that they were mentioning in here, but there was a concerted effort by one particular party to organize and to register voters. And this is one of the numbers that I have in here, that we registered 70,000 new voters last year. And approximately for this year in Virginia, there's an election every single year. This year we have an election for governor. This year the number that was given to me is that approximately we have 17,000 new young voters. They're gonna be 18 years of age by the election day, November 3rd. So we have this challenge now to involve them. Many of these are Latino kids that they're gonna work in, and then we're working with them. So and the contest, our context is a little bit different because we're new. This is a new destino de la migración. We're an emerging community, but to close it in terms of the contest, something that I like to say that I'm very proud of that. Virginia was probably one of the bluest of blue states. Virginia is now a red state.
The other way around.
I'm sorry. Yeah, the red is of red, the blue is of like. I'm so excited about that. Now we're the bluest of blue. Yeah, you're right.
Sir, could I have 1 minute, please?
Sure.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that we were so proud 3 weeks ago that over 2,000 Latinos were graduated from high school in Las Vegas, and we see a future in politics in those graduates. Thank you.
Well, that might be an interesting segue into a question I had about Latino office holders. I mean, the Angelica discussed a progression from hoy marchamos, mañana votamos, y al día siguiente llamamos, escribimos al legislador. What about Latino office holders? What trends do you all see going forward in terms of Latinos running for office? Naleo, I think, in its latest survey said that Latinos made only modest gains in the U.S. Congress and in the state senates, and saw a modest drop in the state assembly. So it seems that the numbers are rather flat. And I'm curious what you all feel is the location for that development. Is it at the city and county council levels? Is it there? And what is the role of role models? There was mention of Sonia Sotomayor, I think, in one of the previous sessions.
So this is, I think that one of the things that in California, we're very lucky in that we have a lot of representation from Latino elected officials. I think that because we're talking about Latino civic engagement, but it's connected to immigrant civic engagement, we have to say we have very few immigrant Latino elected officials. And that is very significant in that in many instances, when we're going in there and we're talking about immigration issues, there isn't an experience of what it means to cross a border, what it means not to have documents, or what it means, I think we have one city council member who has just been elected, who is immigrant, right? And of course, and then of course that anomaly of Schwarzenegger, right, who's an immigrant. But I want to put that sort of to the side because I think it's an interesting situation in and of itself. But the point of it is most of our local Latino elected officials are either the children or the grandchildren of immigrants. And I think it's important to understand the difference because many times what we find with our Latino elected officials in Congress, et cetera, is they're also very busy trying to gain power within the political establishment, right? So that they actually, so in many instances, they're both negotiating and figuring out how they can represent an issue like immigration and at the same time move up the ladder of political power within the Democratic or other party. And so for me, I think that's interesting. And sometimes it's not, I would say, does it equally translate into political power on your issue if you have a Latino elected official? I would say sometimes, because it depends on what the issue is. But at the end of the day, we have very friendly statements, and that matters a lot. Very much public statements, public actions that say we are in favor of immigrants, and we don't have necessarily sort of this anti-immigrant, vociferous, violent kind of standing. And I think we should recognize that it's not Arizona, as you had stated. I think the other piece that I think is of the maturation or political sophistication in Los Angeles and in California is that Latinos are also voting for African American candidates. I mean, to think about Karen Bass, who's the first African American woman to be Speaker of the Assembly. She comes out of the Community Coalition, which is an African American Latino organization that was voted in by Latinos and African Americans and white, and because who is a progressive leader, and then who actually was voted by her colleagues, many of them who are Latino, into the role of Speaker. So I think it's two things happening at the same time, in terms of this maturity, I think, politically, that I think then is also helpful. So when I think about Karen Bass, my goodness, this person really stands on the side of immigrants, but she's not a Latino and she's not an immigrant. So it's those two things.
I think we can. I'm sorry. Did anybody else want to comment on that question?
Virginia, anything happen?
Yeah.
Well, Virginia, it's a little bit different because we're an emerging community. We have very few Latinos elected in Virginia, none at the House or Senate level, but we have at the local level, we have five. We have five councilmen, 3 councilmen, and 2 school board members, 2 women and 3 men. Because I think we're the new kid in town in Virginia. We're the newest populations. What we've seen is the very beginning of the organizing in a political way. I'm one of the founders of the Democratic Latino Organization of Virginia. We call it DLOV. And we've been working very closely with the party, and finally, after I think 5 years, now we finally become an official caucus of the Democratic Party. But there's other avenues that we also have for persons that are interested. The party has training for when they want to be candidates, and we have programs. The University of Virginia has a program called the Sorensen Institute. We have 2 of Racing Stars here today, Jaime Reizaga and Cindy Benavides, who are both participants. I participated in that program. We have other programs that. But I think what we're beginning to make inroads, and I read and talking to other colleagues, that then when you belong to boards and commissions, you start making that transition to become more politically active. And we've seen the increase in appointments of Latinos to boards and commissions with the last 2 governors. Our last 2 governors are Democratic governors. Both speak Spanish fluently, even though they say no, but they both speak Spanish fluently, which is an anomaly in Virginia, that you have 2 governors, one after the other, they speak. Both speak Spanish. One learned in Argentina and the other one learned in Honduras, being a missionary. Just imagine that. So we've seen from being in 2005 in 1.50 appointments, we now in 2008 we have 4% appointments to boards and commissions. So we know that we hope with time that's going to translate in a more active political participation and becoming candidates and being candidates. And again, there's two here there. I hope to see them very soon being candidates in Virginia.
Las Vegas, we don't have anyone in as far as in Congress or anywhere, well, near Washington, but he's on his way. We have a young man by the name of Ruben Kewen, and he's been elected for a state position. We have two Hispanics, a Cuban and a Mexican American in the state level. About the beginning of this month, there was also a new group formed, which it's the initials are LIPS, LIPS, Latinas in Politics, was recently formed. So again, since Las Vegas is new as far as immigrant political participation is concerned, but we're getting there.
Do you want to add anything, Juan Jose? Or?
No.
Okay. Well, maybe we can open it up to discussion from the group. Are there any questions here? We can start maybe this way and go around. If that's all right. Lourdes?
Yeah,
Could you wait for the mic?
Maybe primarily for Angelica, but probably for any who would like to address it. It has to do with gender. And I'm wondering, as I hear you all narrate the stories of how different groups have, or different individuals have been interested increasingly in running for office and so forth, whether you notice any gender patterns that are important for us to also take note of, whether it's who tends to run more for office or not, and also once they do run for office, and I was intrigued by your comment about they many times are more interested in cultivating their power and their ascendancy to power than to really become a voice for the immigrant agenda. So I'm interested in whether, are there any gender issues or differences that we need to be aware of?
The answer, yes. The answer is yes. I think whether when you're talking about politics and you're talking about power, these are issues in which the dominant, both in terms of gender, race, class, really play a significant role. And when we're talking about the empowerment of our community, is really trying to get rid of those obstacles, moving beyond the reality as it is, right? Even within, and I would say migrant-led organizations, right? In terms of when you start talking about immigration to the United States, the vast majority now of immigrants are women. And so the questions are: what are their role within organizations, immigrant organizations, and you'll find that much of the leadership across the country is of women. When you're talking about now politics in terms of representation, it's very interesting that what we found, both in terms of the labor movement from Los Angeles and Maria Elena Durazo, and some of our top in terms of leadership is women who really are trying to buck a lot of the establishment. But then when you look at who are the office holders, primarily men. So I think but those are the things that's why we're trying to build power, right? Build power and practice. I always say citizenship is not a piece of paper. Citizenship is a practice, right? The practice of citizenship. And that there's all these different things that you must do in order to practice it. To the point from our perspective is all those young people that participated in the marches, that everywhere, going to knock on doors. I would like to see them as office holders. I would like to see Shayla, who's amazing to be an office holder eventually, and that she had the practice of citizenship and engagement because she participated in the marches, because she was part of the leadership fighting for scholarships and financial aid, because she's fighting dearly so that she could have legal status for her and her family, and that, you know, she's moving forward. And one thing that I want to say is not to assume that people cannot do it. You know, one of the things that has been really the pushback has been that we as immigrants, you know, I hear this all the time, we're really good at marching, right? But then they used to say, you guys love to march, but you don't vote. So then people voted, and they're like, whoa. Elections can be won with immigrants. And then they said, but you guys cannot beat those anti-immigrants with their calls. Well, let me give you, yesterday, there were calls into President Obama and into the administration. And there were about over 28,000 calls into his office that we can document, right? We can actually document. And over 26,000 of those calls were from Spanish speakers. And so we need to be much more like our, you know, what we're expecting. And but the one caveat is people need to have the tools, and we need to do the hard work of not just talking about what it means to citizenship, but engage people, engage individually. When people say 1 million people went out to vote, 1.4 million became citizens, it was because organizations in Virginia, in Las Vegas, in Los Angeles, Chicago, Nebraska, you go on and on and on, you aggregate the large and the small, the medium numbers, and then you can actually aggregate those numbers to something significant. So I think we need to understand how important the on-the-ground work is towards moving us forward.
I would like to say, to address your question as well, in the 2 cycles that I've ran our field campaign in 2006 and 2008, one thing that I've noticed that we are increasingly noticed among the ICR's membership, that the organizers are increasingly women. More, heavily, previously formally dominated by male field in the last 8 to 10 years. Like, of the fellows that I placed in various communities, women outnumber men 2 to 1. And they are more reliable as organizers. The guys, you guys, I took leave of absence of the coalition and I worked electoral campaigns as well. And the electoral campaigns are inherently a little more chauvinistic in style and practice, how they do things, and very hierarchical, no questions asked, shut up and do it, right? So, and the community organizing side is communally infused with women organizers. So I think it's going to be interesting to see a fusion of that for our organizations that do community and electoral organizing. And I think what's going to really lead to, and I'm really excited about, is a new generation of women leadership and elected officials. We're starting to see it more in Illinois, where more and more of our directors, our leaders and organizations are increasingly women, and they add a whole new element to the work. So I think that's really exciting. I'm pretty sure that I will be running campaigns for women candidates more often than for men. So I think that, and I just worked on a campaign for a woman candidate, and she was the one of only one woman candidate out of 13. Out of 2 out of 13, and she was absolutely the best choice for me. She didn't win, but I felt so much that she really connected with the community more. So I think that you're going to start to see a lot of increase in that as well.
Do we have any other questions from this side of the room?
Good afternoon. I'm Jaime Areizaga. I'm from Virginia. First of all, congratulations to you for the work you've done. I just wanted to say something because the gentleman from Las Vegas spoke about his case, and I think you're all opening the floodgates. I really think time is on our side, and it's only, as you have said, numbers, and it's like the wave in the sea. You start by having the numbers, you start by, you go on by registering people, by having them to vote, getting engaged, and then running for office. And in some cases, like in California, it's an extremely mature market for us. We have the mayor of Los Angeles. We've had a lieutenant governor. We have another candidate for lieutenant governor now. But this is almost everywhere. Over the last couple of months, I've traveled through a number of the western states. And I went to Salt Lake City, and I decided to visit the Senate just to visit the Capitol. It's kind of the kind of thing I do when I go somewhere. So I went to the Capitol, and I walked in, and the lady that was giving me the tour, I asked her, are there any Latinos in your legislature? She said, I don't know. as soon as we walk into the Senate, I heard the Senate chairperson say, "Senator Romero, it's your turn." Well, the caucus leader of the Democratic Party in Utah, it's a Hispanic woman, and the minority leader, I mean, the Democratic leader of the caucus below her, it's a Hispanic man. So, and then I went to Phoenix, Arizona, and if you go to Phoenix, in the Democratic caucus in Phoenix, there's a large number of Hispanic members. So I think it's only a matter of time. You know, if we're in Utah, if we're in Arizona, even with these issues, I think it's only a matter of time. And you know, even in the places where we don't think there is activism, like Alaska, there is, and people are getting engaged. So just wanted to point that out.
I want to say that, going back to David Ayon's point, and that's exactly why people are fighting us so hard on immigration reform. I mean, I just feel like we need to understand that what does it mean to enfranchise 12 million people? What does it mean to, you know, give more power to their children? So I feel like we need to really take advantage of it, but then recognize why there's also such a fight. I mean, there's other elements of race, et cetera, but it is about ultimately being part of the electorate, that expansion of the electorate that could mean, you know, certain people like Sessions, right, or a Kyle, who might just not have a job, and that's what we're also talking about.
I thought it was really interesting that you used the phrase market maturity or mature market, and I was going to ask the panel if you all view the kind of the flip side of that, which would be whether the fact that the Latino electorate might be seen as an untapped market, if that increases its leverage of the individual voter and of his interests.
What I've noticed with parties is that they haven't quite gotten how to get to the Latino voter, right? They understand that they have to, but like it takes so much time and money to take an immigrant voter and to convert that into a frequent voter that they always give up. You know, they always fall short of what's necessary. It's much more expensive to turn out an infrequent or a new citizen voter, so they always give up and they go with old school. You know, they go with patronage politics, right? So, I think that parties as institutions are not maturing fast enough. But I think that the community-based organizations, or immigrant civic society, migrant civic society of churches, community-based organizations, hometown associations are maturing that much faster, and they're starting to feel like we could control this market and therefore control our vote, giving us power. Right? The Latino vote, the power lies not only in sheer like having a majority in a district, but is in being the swing. And if we control that swing, then we have power. Right? So I think that's where the parties are, the Republican Party is definitely falling behind, right? The Democratic Party is falling behind more importantly because they don't want to invest. They're content with letting the Republicans mess up and then we'll just inherit the Latinos. But I think increasingly what we are doing in Chicago, for example, is we're trying to control the immigrant vote in Democratic primaries to target anti-immigrant Democrats, So, we take particular pride that in the Speaker of the House's ward, he says, he's been the Speaker of the House in this area for like 20, 30 years, and that he says, I can't stand all these immigrants in my ward. I don't know how they're going to vote and what they're going to do. I can't control them, and we take particular pride that we are moving into his ward and controlling that vote from him. So I think the maturity lies not in the parties and the institutions, but I think it's on our end that it's the maturity is coming from.
In Las Vegas, I believe that in politics right now it's an open field. The only problem is that since Central Americans, South Americans, Caribbean, Mexico, I guess there's not quite a unity in the community to say, hey, it's all right, he's Mexican, but let's go ahead and support him, let's vote for him. I guess that's something that we need to work at right now, getting everybody together and say, you know what, it doesn't really matter whether it's a man or a woman, whether it's Mexican or Guatemalan or Salvadoran, as long as it takes care of our issues, our problems.
I think in Virginia we're seeing that now politicians are beginning to finally realize it, and what Capato said, I cannot continue with this anti-immigrant trend that they had for the last few years. Last election, with the exception of one person, chairman of a county board in Prince William, every other candidate, Republican, I have to say, the run in an anti-immigrant campaign lost in Virginia. But Corey Stewart is the only one who's still there, and we're seeing now in the current, again, there is an election this year. We have two candidates for candidates for the governors, and we're now seeing this effort, particularly, which hasn't happened much in past years with the Republicans, candidate to governor that is now beginning to tap the immigrant market, not only the Latinos, but the Asian, Indian, Chinese, all these other markets for the first time, who has himself this distance from the very anti-immigrant in his party. And we're like said, we don't know yet how that's going to play in this election, but we're watching it carefully. So it's little by little we're getting a growing role in the politics in Virginia. And I think also at the last election we proved, like you said, that we marched. There was not a march in Virginia. The march was here in Washington, and that was a national march. So some of us came from Virginia for the march, and then we voted. And we are like Angelica said, like that. We now are calling and organizing and going not only at the federal level, but also we have done it in the past at the local level to try to little by little organize a few of us Latinos growing in other allies, our strategic allies, to go and call and go into these offices and say, wait a minute, you cannot keep doing this to our population, to our immigrant population, because we're here and we're growing and we're boarding. So I think they're beginning to potential. It's been, maybe for some of us, it's a very, very painfully slowly process, but we're getting there, and it's going to take time. We'll see. Hopefully this next election will prove again that the anti-immigrant propaganda is not going to win in Virginia. We don't know if it will play or not.
One thing that I wanted to say is, one of my responsibilities was to fundraise money for the We're America Alliance, nationally. And one of the things that was very striking to me was this fear that a lot of the progressive donors and political donors have of the immigrant vote too. So it's not, and part of it is around the social conservative, this idea that, are we also, supporting? Yes, on certain issues, we would probably see eye to eye. But I was basically told several times, but what's the guarantee that these voters will not then go against some of the critical progressive issues around, domestic partnership and, equality and other, issues of choice, which we saw in obviously in California. What we did in California as part of an entire process across the state, which was to actually produce we produce a guide, our Mobilize the Immigrant Vote guide, in which we took very clear stances against Proposition 4, against Proposition 8, and of course the one that we walked around, Proposition 6. But the thing about it is, I feel that part of our being able to the market, doing this work is also about resourcing the work. It doesn't just happen magically. It happens because you have to hire people. I mean, when you guys put the number of 1 million, when you compare that to what other organizations and other people actually get to do the kind of work, it's minuscule, right? And so part of what our challenge is in moving forward is also having the resources to the different organizations on the ground in order to hire precinct walkers, hire phone bankers, because we're doing a lot of the stuff volunteer, and we're doing amazing work just even on few resources and volunteer, but we're going to have to be able to tap into that other resources. But progressive funders on civic engagement are still figuring out if this is where their investment is going to go.
Even a million.
We have a question up here. Could we get the microphone? Or actually, just use this.
Yeah, I wanted to just pick up on something that Lenny hinted at here, and I'm wondering if you're seeing in different places that the anti-immigrant message is losing a little bit of its cachet, because for a long time, which doesn't mean that politicians are becoming pro-immigration or pro-immigrant, but that what was for a long time seen as politically viable to go after immigrants suddenly looks less viable, particularly in local races. Not everywhere, but in some people who might have taken this up as a stance are a little bit more wary after 2008. Maybe it's too early to tell this at this point, but it sounds like the volume's gone down a little bit around the country, which is interesting. But it's hard to tell inside the Beltway.
In Nevada, they had billboards for a while, and eventually, I think after the largest march that we had, those billboards went down, and again, we haven't had another Minutemen meeting in the city of Las Vegas. So I think there's probably a realization that we really are not as bad as they thought, or as bad as some of them think. That we are not here to mess up the economy in the country, or to cause harm to anyone. I think we're here to work, and our work is being seen right now by many of them.
Yeah, I was thinking it. Yeah, and now I'm going to get it right. I even wrote it down so I won't confuse the colors. The Senate in Virginia, the House and the Senate, for years, and I really don't know exactly how many, had been Republican. Last year, for the first time in many years, the Virginia Senate became a Democratic majority. Candidate for senator, an incumbent for senator for a high Latino district in here in Northern Virginia, Springfield, and you're well on your way to sort of Richmond. He lost to a newcomer, and we know that he lost because he was the most anti-immigrant senator that we could have. Any bill that you can imagine that making community workers or non-profit organizations criminal for working with illegals, like he called them, it was him. No driver's license, I think it was him. I mean, you name it. And I think finally the electorate in his district, they got tired of that. So that gave the control back to the Democrats in this particular situation. And he has been one of the worst. We are thinking, and I was talking to Jaime, who spoke previously, the current candidate, Republican candidate for Attorney General, also senator, he was a senator or delegate, Cuccinelli? Senator, very anti-immigrant. So at that point, it might be played. But what is interesting is the candidate for governor is staying away from that until now. He has stayed away from that, and now we're hearing that they're beginning to. He's making the rounds with the immigrant community. So I think they're getting at that our votes are important, and it proved to them, because that particular Senate race from last year, it was somebody they were so sure that he was going to win. They were sure that he was going to win. But I think the Latinos in that district, many of the Latinos in that district, say enough is enough, and they went out and voted en masse and get him out of there.
I would say my experience has been in, there's a stalemate in certain parts, right? I think that, for example, in 2006 in Illinois, there was at least half a dozen anti-immigrant mailers where these pictures of presumably Mexicans jumping a border, and Osama bin Laden were in the same mailer. We put them up on our website and said those really grotesque mailers being sent out by candidates and parties, right? So in 2008, we saw that decrease substantive, significantly. We can't really identify any hardcore anti-immigrant mailers, right? But what I'm seeing is a sophistication by anti-immigrant candidates in their messaging. I organize, and right now I'm assigned to the Illinois 10th Congressional District to organize that congressman around immigration reform. He once said that family planning was a solution. Family planning in Mexico was a solution to illegal immigration in the United States. So that was in 2005. He said that. So we ran actions against him. We distributed condoms outside his rally, saying that this is the immigration solution. And I think what the stalemate is, he's not using that kind of rhetoric anymore. But I think he's now focusing on the drug trade and things of that nature. So he's sophisticating his messaging as to why not allow amnesty and securing the border, as well as we're sophisticating our message. So we're at a stalemate. There's not active criminals, illegals, terrorists, but he's not being a champion by any means, or he's not ever painting us in a good light. So I think that in terms of electoral, civic, the sort of candidates using that rhetoric, there's a stalemate right now, and it'll take a while before they become champions, right? So.
One of our biggest challenges in moving immigration reform, so to tell the story of 2006 and who got elected, and Rahm Emanuel's strategy was that, Democrats were going to take over in 2006 by actually being more Republican, more anti-immigrant than the Republicans, right? And so this is the way you were going to win seats in North Carolina, sort of in the interior of the country. So what's interesting is, so then we got a majority, right? And everybody's like, okay, now immigration reform, but that didn't happen, right? That's certainly not what happened in 2006. And what's interesting now in 2008, as we're going and doing all our targeting across the country and figuring out, okay, which are all the districts, which are all the senators and all the people that we need to get on board in order to do, our math, basically get to the votes. The people we're struggling with, what I call is Rahm Emanuel's Democrats, right? So these are the people that were basically elected in 2006 who are Democrats who now we have to convince in 2008 that they can win their seat in these areas based on on immigration and, doing the polling and all the different kind of work that we have to do. But at the end of the day, I feel like right now, electorally, that's, in terms of the anti-immigrant sentiment, it's it doesn't just wear off. So there's the residue that we're basically we're dealing with right now. 2 years ago, that's what was going, 3 years ago, that's what happened. Now this is the situation that we find ourselves in. And
one last thing I would like to say. I think anti-immigrants have learned that being anti-immigrant doesn't win you votes. It just motivates your base.
Yes.
So it motivates their base, but it doesn't swing independents. So they still got to say for the base, and other things, but they're not doing, so the primaries are fused with anti-immigrant stuff, right? And then the general elections are a little more subtle. So I'm curious to see where it goes.
You wait for the mic.
This is directed towards Juan and Angelica. You guys have a lot of experience, or your organizations have a lot of experience of unrallying the troops, so to say, to go out and for political participation. You think it would be feasible or beneficial to do a national? To kind of go into the different cities. For example, Las Vegas, we did have, we were mobilized, but I do not believe we were mobilized to the degree that you guys were, and kind of going into those cities that have these swing votes and kind of teach us in a way.
Well, I think you can teach us a lot, actually, because I feel like we cannot get a meeting with our senator, but you guys can pull in Senator Reid, the coalition, faster than we can, because we're so big that our relationships with political elected officials is very different because of the mass numbers of elected officials that we have to interact with. So I think that there's a lot of learning both ways. So it's never and I also feel that what we have to understand in terms of the immigrant rights movement, immigrant rights field, is it's very new. For our organization, we were started by a group of other organizations back in 1986. But if you really add it up, we're not that old. as an organization, right? 20 plus years, that's significant, right? Most of the organizations that were started around immigrant rights started after 2006, 2005. And if you do an actual matrix of where all the different organizations are, I mean, most of them are very, very young. Young in terms of process, in terms of a process. So I think that each organization, there's lots of things that we shouldn't reinvent the wheel. That's why we do a lot of sharing. And part of what we've tried to do with the Escuelas de Democracia and all the things that many of us have participated in is try to bring together all that information so that then we all kind of learn together. But we do a lot of sharing. Sometimes I feel like we learn a lot from Illinois, we learn a lot from Nebraska, and it's bringing us together that I think is going to be the mutual learning, because I feel like there's so many things that I see you guys doing in Nevada that we wish we could to move forward. And more, I would say more communication and more interaction would be really good. And these spaces are very helpful too.
I mean, when we train people on our model of electoral organizing, what we always tell them is like, when we first started in 2002, we started with 9 precincts and only about 1,000 voters, and only a handful, like 5 to 7 volunteers. That's where we started. You got to crawl before you can walk, You just got to make it this, in organizing, they say you don't do for people what they won't do for themselves. So, like, just start with something and then, be committed to it over time. And over time you'll start to see the results. And I think that, I've had the benefit of being in an organization that made that decision early on to like, all right, we're going to increase our sophistication here over time. And, now we may start, now there's other opportunities, right? So I think that there's always opportunities to train. There is an organization in Nevada that does this. I think it's called PLAN. I forgot what it stands for. But they do a lot of voter registration and a lot of work there. And they got some good work and they got some good peoples out there. So I think that... yeah, there's always opportunities. We host boot camps for immigrant organizers throughout the country. So there's always opportunities. There's always ways to do that. And I think that a lot of organizations do share a lot from each other. And obviously, we always, in electoral politics, it's funny. People say, well, we're different here. This is how we are and this and that. But what I've been trained in electoral politics is, yeah, you're different, but there's certain things that are always the same. And I don't want to hear it. I just want you to do it. So, so. I think there's certain elements of that, but there's always opportunities for training out there, and it's just about like making that decision first to try it out for yourself. Go volunteer for a party, try that out, see if you like it, and then if you liked it, and if you didn't, then gather some people and start building your own institution. The
only other thing that I was going to say, I paid a lot of attention to your presentation earlier on, and I feel like we can also learn a lot from unions, and we can teach unions a lot. So it's also like, at the end of the day, what's great about immigrant rights organizing is you get to kind of bring in from different places different learnings and then make it even stronger. So I feel you learn from unions, you learn from the parties, you learn from the Latino. There's a whole Latino electoral strategy. Like, we learned so much from Naleo, but we also had, what we've learned was, Naleo was just the manner in which they engaged with us was not paternalistic or condescending. It was like, we have all this, we want to share it. This is how you can use it. So I feel like that's what I feel is very helpful. So really try to learn from the best. And then there's some things that just don't work, and you just say, this is just not going to work for us, and that's okay, But at least we tried it out, sort of like trying out different shoes.
Facebook doesn't work.
I know that this question wasn't for Las Vegas, but anyways, when the students started talking about getting out on the street and marching in Las Vegas, the community was divided. We didn't know whether to join them or just to, watch them from a distance. Eventually, we went ahead and started in the downtown area, but the more we marched towards the Strip, the more we went south, the more people started joining in, and you should have heard the media. They were saying, "Whoa, it started with 500. Now there are over 5,000." And they kept on following by air, and just watching how larger the number was getting. And one of the things that I learned from Los Angeles is that Conguate had a meeting in a hotel, and when we heard, it was actually the footsteps. It wasn't, and there were also, people screaming, yelling out, but anyways, it was so nice, so well organized. There were people on the sidewalk with garbage bags, picking up the garbage and maintaining and keeping order. That was one of the things that we weren't prepared for when it happened in Las Vegas. But a good thing was that at first, when we saw a bunch of kids, we thought that was a bunch of copycats. And but then when we realized that they were doing it in such a respected way, and again with both flags, Mexico and the U.S., Guatemala and U.S., and so it seems like it became a great reality and something that had never happened in the city of Las Vegas. For the first time, we were seen as a bunch of Latinos joined together with only one purpose, and that was to, I guess, in a way, to show that we have the voting power, and that when we want to demonstrate, we're there.
I believe there was a question.
Yeah, Sonia Michelle, I'm here at the Wilson Center. This is a question that maybe was more relevant to some of the earlier panels, and I'm sorry if it's not relevant to this one, but I just wanted to pick up on Robert's question before about immigration sentiment, and this is actually probably a question for Lenny, but maybe some of the other places have had this too. And I was just thinking about the incident, I think it was about a year ago, when people mobilized against the Day Workers the Day Workers Center in Northern Virginia. Are you aware of that? There was in one of the local towns, I forget which one, but people started to, they organized a center to help day workers, a place where they could wait and get services and so forth, and the local people tried to get rid of it. And it seemed to me that was very much an expression of anti-immigrant sentiment, and I just wondered what's happened since then. Is that connected to some of these other more formal political developments, and also if other people have experienced that in other cities and other states?
Yeah, that happened in Herndon, and I think that's probably part also what mobilized a lot of the ones who can participate in saying, what are they doing this? I mean, they had a good system. The system was working, and then they come and decided to close it, and so there was this big backlash for that in Herndon. In other parts, we've been very lucky. As my bio says, I'm the chair of a day labor center, and day labor center that some people might be in disagreement with me, but we don't want to make waves. We don't want to make a lot of noise. We're try to be low key in order to avoid some of that, because we have the support of our county authorities for that, and we try to work very close with them, and we're trying, thanks to the good suggestions of Juan Jose, giving me ideas on how we have to start to begin to prepare a response in case something happens or somebody brings bad attention to the center. But I think that was one of the things that also to mobilize a lot to organize, because they were accusing them of a lot of things that I think that, I don't know, they have continued to happen, even that there's not a day labor site anymore. The problem right now with some of the sites, and probably one of the things that kind of subsided this attention is the economy. The day labor sites are suffering a lot. So there was not a reason for them probably, or there's not a big reason for them to congregate there anymore, because there's no jobs. We're seeing it with our center, how the drop in job offers, the job offers has dropped like at least 50% from last year. So that's creating sometimes there's no reason for us to be here. We have to move and go to some places, particularly in those areas that had been so affected by the loss of housing in the mortgage foreclosures. Some others we're seeing them moving, and we are really concerned because the reality is there's no jobs, particularly during the summer, the summer season. Hopefully that will not play again later in these elections. We hope it will not, but we'll keep monitoring.
I was going to say that it's also like it's just an element of actually the day laborers being so visible, right? So we started out in Los Angeles. They opened up the day labor centers in 1989. I began working at Chitl in 1995 and started opening up centers throughout Los Angeles and Agoura Hills. And what I used to actually deal with was actually bailing out our organizers because the police would arrest them and put them in jail because they were actually going against, their ordinances, which we fought against. But it was this very visceral, horrible treatment of day laborers, which was fought back against. But in Agoura Hills, for example, what they would do is the day laborers would congregate near a hill, and on the hill it was this, it was a mountain, and there was a set of just trees. And what they would do is the police would come in, make the men run up the hill, and then the helicopter would come, and with the helicopter go so low that the day laborers would actually roll down that hill. And so we kept saying this is ridiculous, and MALDEF was very helpful to us in moving this, in terms of litigation and seeking lawsuits, but we actually captured it on film. In terms, one of our organizers went out there and filmed what was going on there. And I think that from that moment, like when I think about what was the worst point in time, was like the organizers were being arrested and this was happening, to the point where an ordinance that was against day laborers was actually rescinded out of a constitutional, fight and just a lot of organizing. And what happens in many of these places across the state, across the country, is what I see as every single time day laborers become a target, and they're so present that then they just become the sort of the Velcro of all the attacks.
We have time for one more question. Is there any questions? No? Do the panelists want to add anything before we close?
I feel I want to say something about immigration reform. So today we had Esther here. There's a reason why Janet Napolitano has been assigned, because Esther is under her sort of under the department, right? She's part of the department, who played a very incredible role. I think when it comes to civic engagement, the next challenge is really the practice of American politics, the way U.S. citizens that are involved, because not all U.S. citizens are involved, but this idea of being a constituent. Like, do we really believe we are the constituents of our elected representatives? And I feel like when that happens, when immigrants really realize, I am a constituent in this district, I am a constituency in this city, and there is a respect that has to be paid to me, and a constituent calls, connects, has a conversation, and feels okay, feels entitled to have a conversation with that elected official, I think things are going to change. And that's a long process, but I think that's the level that we have to get. And it's a combination. I say it's a combination platter. It's the marching, because marching and petitioning your government publicly is part of American politics. Voting is part of American politics. Becoming politically engaged is part of American politics. And then there's being a constituent, right? Just acting as a constituent. And I think that's what we really need in order to move immigration reform. And what I see when immigrants are doing what they're doing, like the challenges that they have, the lives that they're living, and the fact that they're coming out, even though they somebody said they have 2 or 3 jobs, Esther said they have 2 or 3 jobs, all the different issues. Well, all the people that have participated, and these are in the thousands of people, have 2 or 3 jobs, or don't have a job, or are coming. People come to these meetings with literally dirty from the construction work that they just finished. And they show up and they come up, and I feel like part of it is also just giving people a space to participate and not just giving up on people because, of course we have lots of challenges, but what is it that we're doing in order to make it easier for people to participate?
Well, thank you very much. Please join me in thanking the panelists. We're going to move to the closing panel right now. It's Jonathan, Xochitl, and Andrew. And Gaspar. Excuse me.